I'm Elaine and welcome to my kitchen. Well, in a video that I did about a year or so back, I was talking about a recipe that we made in a home economics class back when I was in about the 7th grade in school. This would have been the late 60s, roughly, and it was by far the best coffee cake that I had ever eaten, and I had not found a similar recipe in all these years. I had lost that recipe some years ago. Well, I have finally duplicated it pretty close. I based it on a recipe from my 1941 edition of the New American Cookbook. And it wasn't a coffee cake recipe, but I was able to adapt it, and I pretty much duplicated that recipe. So I'm going to show that to you today. So here we go. Let me put you down so you can see what we're doing here. All right. And so what I'm going to do in my mixing bowl is we are going to add, let me get something here, there we go. We're going to add 1/3 of a cup of butter. This has been softened at room temperature, so you can see how soft that is. We're going to add 1/3 of a cup. And we're going to add 3/4 of a cup of sugar. And we're going to add 2 eggs. Just dump those right in there. And we're going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And that's going to go in there as well. And there's my 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Put the lid back on that and put it away. There we go. Alright, now we're going to mix the contents of this bowl. We're going to cream these until it's light and fluffy. So when I get this creamed and light and fluffy, I will be right back with you. Okay, I'm back and I have my egg mixture all creamed and fluffy, and you can see how light and fluffy that looks. Okay, and now what we're going to do, I have taken this off the mixer, off the stand, and by the way, I do have my oven preheating to 350 degrees, and I have greased and floured an 8x8 baking pan. Okay, so we're going to add about 1/3 of this flour, and I'm going to just take my rubber spatula and stir that in. I'm not going to use my mixer at this point, because we don't want this cake to turn out dry. And if you overmix a cake, that is exactly what will happen. You can't, if you overmix your batter, your cake will tend to be dry and crumbly, or just won't have a good texture. Alright, so there is that mixture. Now I'm going to take, this is 1/2 a cup of sour cream, and I'm going to take half of this and mix that in. Mix that into the batter. And incidentally, I forgot to tell you that my flour mixture contains 1 1/2 cups of flour. It contains 3 teaspoons of baking powder and not baking soda, baking powder. And it also contains 1/2 of a teaspoon of salt, and I just stirred that into this measuring cup and mixed that together. And we're going to be adding that alternately with our sour cream. Okay, so I'm going to add another 1/3 of the flour mixture. You want to begin and end with the flour mixture. And I will be listing these ingredients down below, so that you can make this yourself if you like. Alright, and there's that. So now it's time to add the remaining sour cream. Oh, hold on just a second. My doggie wants back in, so she's been outside. I'll be right back as soon as I let her in. Hold on. Sorry about that. She's back in and she's happy now, so I'm going to continue just to stir in that the last of that sour cream. And again, that was 1/2 a cup of sour cream. Alright, and here goes the last of my flour mixture. And I'm just going to stir this in. Okay, it is getting there. Scrape it off the bottom. Scrape that off of my spatula as well. All right, put this over here, out of the way. Okay, I'm going to bring my mixer over, and what I'm going to do is put this back on the mixer for no more than 10, maybe 15 seconds. So just enough to make sure that we do have this mixed thoroughly. So it's going to be a little noisy. Bear with me just for a second. All right, and that ought to do it. We just want to make sure we don't overmix that. I don't want that. I don't want my cake to be dry. And this cake is very moist and buttery. It comes out really well. All right, get this beater out of the way here. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to mix up the topping, and I will be right back with you as soon as I'm ready to do that. Okay, I am ready to mix up my topping, and so in this container here I have 1/4 cup of brown sugar, 1/4 cup of white sugar, 1/2 a cup of flour, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/2 stick of butter that I've cut into pieces just to make it a little easier to mix, and 1 teaspoon cinnamon. If I already mentioned that, I apologize. But anyway, and then 1/2 cup of black walnuts. Now, if you don't have black walnuts, it would be perfectly all right to substitute pecans instead. But I typically use black walnuts because that's what we used in that recipe from way back from my home economics class. And it was very, very good. I do like the taste of the black walnuts. Alright, so I'm just going to take my fingers and mix this together with my fingers because I want to use the heat of my hand to sort of crush up, kind of get that butter softened a little better and get this mixed together into a, oh, you just want a coarse mixture like beach sand or something on that order. Very similar to what we had in my apple crisp video for that crumb topping. Very similar. Very similar recipe to this one. My crumb topping recipe that I use in that apple crisp is kind of a universal thing. I use that in my Dutch apple pie. I use it in my sweet potato casserole. All sorts of, anytime that I need something that requires a crumb topping, that's kind of my go-to standard recipe, what I use in the in the apple crisp recipe, and it's, like I said, very similar to this. This is just on a smaller scale than that. Okay, and we are just about there, and you can see that it's kind of the consistency of beach sand. You see how it holds together when I squeeze it, but it breaks apart nicely and goes into a nice crumb mixture, which is exactly what we're looking for. All right, and last I'm going to add those nuts in and just kind of mix that around. Okay, and I'm going to set this aside. And let me rinse my fingers off. Okay, and I have my baking dish, my 8x8. Forgive the looks of this. I have had this for probably 40 years maybe. I'm not sure how long I've had that, but a good long time. So it's very discolored with its age and showing its age. But we're going to take half of that batter from the cake and we're going to just stir that, or spread that in here. Okay, getting it as even as possible. And that looks pretty even right there. So, okay, just take that little bit off and put that on there too. Okay, very good. All right. Now I'm going to take half of my crumb topping mixture and I'm just going to sprinkle that right in there. Maybe not half, but you know, we're going to sprinkle a good amount of that in there. I like plenty on top too, so okay, we're just going to sprinkle that right into our, there. And I'm going to take my finger and just kind of lightly spread that out as well. All right. Now we're going to take the rest of our batter and spoon that right in on top. Now when I was in the 7th grade in school, like I said, this was probably in the late 60s. The girls were actually required to take home economics and the boys had to take shop. And in home economics you baked several things like this. We would do casseroles and just any kind of recipe that the teacher thought would be good for us to learn how to make. And if it was a particularly good recipe like this was, I always took it home and made it for my family. And my family really seemed to enjoy this recipe pretty well. Okay, we're just going to keep spreading this dough out the best we can here. It tends to want to stick to what's underneath it, and that's all right. That won't hurt a thing. So I'm just going to keep spreading until I get it the way I want it. Alright, we're getting there. Yeah, it's kind of amazing, I think, how times have changed over the years. Where, you know, home economics and shop are no longer required courses. I don't even think they have home economics anymore. But it was where we supposedly learned things like how to put on a dinner party and that kind of thing. How to delegate cleanup. And like I say, if there was I also learned sewing. And if there was a particular recipe or, like I said, anything that I wanted to make, I would bring it home and try that out on my family. And they enjoyed a lot of the recipes that we did. Some of the recipes we did weren't too good. And they did a cherry cobbler recipe that I didn't think was, it wasn't what I was used to in the line of cherry cobbler. My mother always made her cherry pie filling by scratch, and this one in that class used a canned cherry pie filling. And I guess that's all right, but I just kind of prefer the other one. I prefer homemade. All right. Now we're going to take the rest of this crumb topping and just put this right over the top. Okay, and we're going to bake this at 350 degrees for 30 minutes. So in 30 minutes, I will be back to show you what it looks like. Okay, now my cake has gotten done, and let me just turn you down so you can see it. There we go. All right, and it came out really, really nice. It took about 40 minutes, 35 to 40 minutes in my oven, so you'll definitely want to start checking it around 30 minutes just to make sure that you're not over baking it or under baking it. Okay, and here is what it looks like on the inside. And you can see it is very, very moist, and it's not the least bit dry, and the crumb topping just sets it off. All right, and I'm going to turn you back up here so we can, there we go. All right, well, let's try a taste of it. That is very reminiscent of the coffee cake that we made way back in the 7th grade in school. And so anyway, I'm going to be listing these ingredients again in the down in the description, so you can make this for yourself if you like, and let me know in the comments how it turned out for you. Okay, well, I do thank you all so much for watching, and I just want to thank my all my subscribers for subscribing to my channel and watching my videos. I really appreciate each one of you. Well, y'all have a wonderful rest of your day, and thanks again. We'll see you next time.